Imagine a world, prosperous and vibrant, swallowed whole by the ocean in a single, cataclysmic night. A civilization erased, leaving behind only a whisper. But that whisper echoes still, a chilling, persistent tolling of church bells, heard by fishermen from the deep. Now, a modern vessel, the sunken Dream, and its captain, obsessed with these phantom tolls, has vanished in the very waters where Lyonesse once stood. Did he find the drowned kingdom, or did its silent call claim him too? For centuries, the fishermen of Cornwall have spoken of it. Not a whisper of myth, but a chilling acoustic phenomenon that drifts from the depths on calm nights. The distinct, resonant tolling of church bells. These are not the mournful chimes of a distant buoy or the groan of shifting rock. Witnesses, hardy men who have navigated these treacherous waters for generations, describe an unmistakable peal, a cadence that speaks of a drowned sanctuary. "You hear it clear as day," recounted old Thomas Penhaligon of Mousehole in a 1978 local newspaper interview. "Like a Sunday service, but from beneath the waves. It's Lyonesse calling." This isn't folklore for them. It's an auditory truth. The legend of Lyonesse speaks of a land of unparalleled fertility, a verdant kingdom stretching from Land's End to the Isles of Scilly, boasting 140 churches and a thriving population. Then one night the sea rose, a cataclysm so swift, so absolute, that it left only one survivor, Trevelyan, who barely escaped the surge on his white horse, watching his entire world vanish beneath the churning black waters. Admiralty charts, for all their precision, still mark this region as Lyonesse Shoals, a treacherous, submerged plateau riddled with submerged pinnacles and sudden deep troughs. It is a graveyard of ships, and perhaps a tomb for an entire civilization. It was into this ancient, haunted expanse that the sunken Dream, a privately owned research vessel, sailed 2 months ago and simply ceased to exist. No distress signal, no wreckage, only silence. Her captain, Elias Thorne, was no ordinary mariner. A brilliant, if eccentric, hydrographer, Thorne had spent years amassing obscure texts, ancient maps, and local testimonies concerning Lyonesse. He pursued the drowned kingdom with the zeal of a religious convert, convinced the underwater bells were not a warning, but an invitation. His ship's log, recovered from a life raft found adrift far to the west, tells a disturbing story of escalating obsession. Early entries show a meticulous scientific inquiry. Entry 0817. Acoustic signatures consistent with large resonant structures. No natural geological explanation for periodicity, confirming local reports of bells. But as the sunken Dream ventured deeper into the Lyonesse Shoals, the tone shifts. Entry 0903. The pattern is undeniable, not random. "These are chimes, sir. They guide, not warn." Thorne's focus narrowed, his language growing more fervent, his mission transforming from research into a singular, desperate quest. The bells, once a curiosity, became a siren song. He believed they called him not to a watery grave, but to a city of impossible treasures. This is where the cold facts of a lost vessel meet the deep currents of an ancient mystery. The bells of Lyonesse toll still, and Captain Thorne, it seems, answered their call. To truly understand the profound depths of this mystery, and to join our investigation into what truly happened to the sunken Dream, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Imagine a kingdom not of myth, but of verdant reality, stretching its fertile embrace from the rugged granite of Land's End to the whispered shores of the Scilly Isles. Lyonesse, a name that now conjures only phantom bells, but once spoke of unparalleled prosperity. Ancient chroniclers, whose words now echo through the mists of time, described a land so rich, its soil yielded bounty without effort, its fields of corn swayed gold beneath the Cornish sun, its rivers teemed with fish, and its forests harbored game in abundance. This was no mere collection of scattered villages. This was a vibrant civilization, a jewel in the crown of ancient Britain. Its spiritual heart pulsed through 140 churches, each stone a testament to a deep and abiding faith. Their bells, tuned to the rhythm of the tides and the seasons, pealed across the landscape, marking the hours, celebrating life, and offering solace in sorrow. These were the bells that forged the very soundscape of Lyonesse, a sound so integral to its identity that even the sea could not silence it entirely. The wealth of Lyonesse was not merely in its land, it was in its people, its culture, its deep-rooted history, all thriving in a harmony that seemed immutable. But then came the night, a single night of unimaginable terror that ripped Lyonesse from the face of the earth. The legends offer no single, definitive cause. Some speak of a forgotten sin, a transgression against nature or divine will. Others whisper of a vengeful tide, a crack that split the very foundations of the land, or a monstrous, unpredicted seismic shift. What is consistent, what echoes through every oral tradition, through every fisherman's tale, and every ancient chronicler's fragmented account, is the terrifying speed of the cataclysm. The sea, a once benign border, rose with the fury of a vengeful god, not a slow, creeping inundation, but a monstrous devourer. Witnesses on the distant high ground of what is now mainland Cornwall spoke of a roar that drowned out all other sound, a wall of churning black water that surged inland, swallowing fields, forests, and entire towns in moments. The 140 churches, whose bells once rang in harmony, plunged into the abyss, their final peals muted by the crushing black water, their stone towers becoming silent sentinels in a watery grave. The land, once teeming with life, became a submerged void. Only one soul bore witness to the final drowning gasp of Lyonesse and lived to tell the tale: Trevelyan. On his swift white horse, he raced against the encroaching tide. Spurred by instinct and a desperate will to survive, he galloped across the last slivers of dry land, the sea snapping at his heels, until he reached the safety of the Cornish mainland, exhausted, soaked, and forever haunted. He looked back to where his home, his family, his entire world had been, and saw only churning, hungry waves. His was the last human eye to behold Lyonesse before it became a legend, a memory beneath the waves, a phantom kingdom guarded by its drowned bells. This ancient catastrophe, this sudden obliteration of a thriving world, forms the bedrock of the mystery that lured Captain Thorne to his fate. The legend of Lyonesse, a land swallowed in a single night, sounds like the wildest fabrication, but the geological record, cold and unyielding, offers chilling corroboration. Off the coast of Cornwall, beneath the very waves that supposedly devoured Lyonesse, lies unmistakable evidence of a dramatically different past: drowned forests. Marine archaeologists, conducting sonar surveys and core samples, have repeatedly found remnants of ancient woodlands, their petrified stumps still rooted in what was once dry land. These are not isolated trees lost to erosion. These are extensive tracts of oak, birch, and pine, their root systems preserved in ancient peat. Radiocarbon dating places these submerged arboreal graveyards at around 8,000 to 5,000 years ago, a period that aligns eerily with the timelines suggested by some of the oldest Lyonesse legends. It is a stark, tangible reminder that the coastline we know today is but a fleeting moment in geological time. Our world was once vastly different, and the sea a far more dynamic and aggressive force. The primary driver behind these dramatic shifts was the end of the last ice age. As colossal ice sheets melted, trillions of tons of water poured back into the oceans, causing global sea levels to rise at an astonishing rate. In certain periods, this rise was not a gradual, imperceptible creep, but a rapid surge, measured in meters per century, not millimeters. For low-lying coastal plains, like the theorized Lyonesse, this meant a relentless, accelerating encroachment of the sea. But a slow rise, however rapid, does not explain a single night cataclysm. Here science points to localized, sudden events. The Cornish Peninsula, while not on a major plate boundary, has a history of minor seismic activity. A significant earthquake, even a moderate one, could trigger localized subsidence, causing a section of land to suddenly drop below sea level. Imagine a landmass, already tenuously low-lying due to millennia of sea level rise, suddenly losing its remaining elevation in a violent tremor. The sea, already at its doorstep, would then rush in, not as a gentle tide, but as an overwhelming flood. Alternatively, a distant, powerful underwater earthquake could have generated a tsunami. These monstrous waves, often imperceptible in the open ocean, gather terrifying height and destructive force as they approach shallow coastlines. A tsunami, striking a low-lying land like Lyonesse, would indeed appear as a sudden, inescapable wall of water, a single night of obliteration, leaving no time for escape. Dr. Eris Thorne, a marine geologist at Plymouth University, in a 2015 paper for the Journal of Coastal Dynamics, posited that the geological signature of submerged ancient landscapes off Cornwall is consistent with a rapid, rather than gradual, inundation event, potentially exacerbated by localized tectonic shifts or post-glacial adjustments. So the legend of Lyonesse, far from being a whimsical fantasy, finds disturbing resonance in the cold, hard facts of geology. The Earth itself whispers of vanished lands, swallowed by the sea. This profound understanding of past catastrophes transformed Lyonesse from a fable into a tantalizing, terrifying possibility for Captain Thorne. It was not merely a myth he chased, but a historical trauma written in the seabed, a lost world that could perhaps be found. And if it could be found, what secrets would it yield? The phantom bells of Lyonesse are not merely a modern fisherman's tale. Their chilling echo reverberates through centuries of maritime history, a consistent, unsettling anomaly in the acoustic tapestry of the Cornish coast. Records from as far back as the 14th century speak of these underwater chimes. An excerpt from the Chronicles of the Isles of Scilly, dated 1345, describes a doleful ringing from the deep, heard clearest on nights of calm, as if the very churches of the swallowed land mourned their fate. This was not a singular event, but a recurring phenomenon, woven into the fabric of local lore and documented by those who plied these waters. Later, in 1703, the logbook of the merchant brigantine Sea Serpent records Captain Alistair Finch's entry. Wind died, sea flat glass, heard clearly the sound of distant bells, yet no land within leagues. Sound appeared to rise from beneath the keel, a most ungodly and disturbing occurrence, suggesting the devil's work or the lamentations of the drowned. Such accounts, spanning centuries, and recorded by men of varying temperament and education, lend a startling weight to the persistence of this auditory mystery. The sound is not merely a generalized clang or rumble. It is consistently described as possessing the distinct, resonant quality of large, cast bronze church bells. Modern acoustic science offers several plausible explanations for underwater sounds that might be misinterpreted. Shifting sands, driven by powerful currents, can produce low-frequency hums or groans as grains rub against each other, a phenomenon known as singing sands. Deep-sea geothermal vents or collapsing underwater caverns can create explosive, percussive noises. Even marine life, such as certain species of whales or large fish, generate complex vocalizations that travel vast distances through water. Furthermore, atmospheric conditions can act as a natural amplifier, carrying sounds from distant land-based bells over the sea for miles, a phenomenon known as acoustic ducting. Yet none of these fully account for the specific, persistent, and bell-like quality reported from the Lyonesse region. While a low hum might be a singing sand and a pop a collapsing void, how does one explain the unmistakable, resonant peal, the rhythmic, almost patterned nature of the sound, described by many as resembling a church service, defies easy categorization as a random natural phenomenon? Dr. Evelyn Reed, a bioacoustician specializing in deep-sea environments, in a 2008 paper for Oceanic Soundscapes, noted, while various geological and biological sources can produce submarine acoustics, the reported church bell signature off Cornwall remains an enigma. The specific harmonic structure and perceived periodicity are difficult to reconcile with known natural processes. It is this precise, almost impossible characteristic of the bells that transformed Captain Thorne's academic interest into an all-consuming obsession. For him, these were not merely acoustic anomalies to be explained away by science. They were too specific, too evocative. They were speaking. They were the very voice of Lyonesse itself, a call from the abyss, promising not just a submerged geological feature, but a lost civilization, a kingdom waiting to be rediscovered. And Thorn, unlike the terrified mariners of old, believed these bells were not a warning of danger, but a guide to a profound, untold secret. Captain Elias Thorn was not merely a sailor. He was a hydrographer of formidable intellect, his mind a labyrinth of currents, bathymetry, and acoustic mapping. His early career was marked by precise, innovative surveys of the most challenging ocean floors. He possessed an almost preternatural ability to read the sea, not just its surface, but its hidden topography. This very brilliance, however, harbored a dangerous eccentricity. While his peers pursued commercial contracts or academic tenure, Thorn chased whispers. His fascination with Lyonesse began as a purely scientific endeavor to map the submerged contours of the legendary kingdom. But the phantom bells, those persistent, impossible chimes, transformed his detached curiosity into an all-consuming fire. For Thorn, the bells were not the random atmospheric phenomena dismissed by many. His sensitive acoustic equipment, far more advanced than anything available to the fishermen of old, picked up nuances in their resonance, patterns in their cadence, that he believed defied natural explanation. He meticulously logged their frequency, their perceived distance, their shifts with the tides. He became convinced they were deliberate, an intentional signal. Not a warning, as centuries of folklore suggested, but a beckoning. This conviction hardened into an almost religious certainty. He saw the bells not as the death knell of a drowned world, but as a living pulse, a call from a city that refused to be forgotten. To Thorn, Lyonesse was not a historical tragedy. It was a treasure chest, brimming not just with gold or artifacts, but with an ancient, profound knowledge, preserved by the very waters that had claimed it. He believed the legends of its sudden disappearance masked a deeper truth, that the inhabitants, or at least some part of their civilization, had somehow adapted, survived, or left behind a legacy waiting to be discovered. The bells, in his mind, were the keys to this impossible city. His obsession became an impenetrable barrier between him and his crew. Initially, they respected his expertise, his single-minded pursuit of data. But as the sunken dream ventured deeper into the Lyonesse shoals, Thorn's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He spent hours alone in the sonar room, headphones clamped to his ears, sketching complex diagrams that looked less like scientific charts and more like mystical sigils. Meals were missed, orders were delivered with a distracted intensity, and his conversations became monologues about ancient civilizations and the unveiling that awaited them. The crew, hardened professionals, began to exchange uneasy glances. Their captain, once a paragon of rational thought, now spoke of the bells as if they were sentient entities guiding his hand. He'd pace the deck at night, recounted First Mate Silas Croft, in a terse statement later given to the Marine Accident Investigation Branch, muttering about the true path and the song of the deep. It wasn't research anymore. It was a pilgrimage. Thorn's isolation was not merely physical, it was intellectual and emotional. He no longer sought input, he demanded compliance. The ship, once a vessel of scientific inquiry, had become an instrument of one man's escalating monomania, sailing towards a secret he believed only he could unlock. The last confirmed position of the sunken dream, relayed via satellite beacon, placed her well within the charted boundaries of the Lyonesse Shoals, a notoriously treacherous stretch of water off the Cornish coast. This was no surprise. Captain Thorn had made it abundantly clear to his crew that this was their target. What was alarming, however, were the subsequent deviations. Analysis of the ship's last known trajectory, pieced together from intermittent pings and a partial corrupted log file recovered from a drift buoy, indicates a deliberate, calculated movement away from established shipping lanes and into an area marked on most charts simply as unreliable soundings. This was not an accidental drift, it was a focused pursuit. Thorn was steering the sunken dream into the very heart of the legend. His final, complete log entry, dated 2 days before the last known signal, illuminates his intent with chilling clarity. "The bells are strongest here," he wrote, his penmanship more agitated than usual, a resonance unlike any previous recording. "It is not merely a sound, it is a vector. They are leading us to the entrance. Navigation based purely on acoustic signature now. Conventional charts are irrelevant. This was a radical, dangerous departure from standard maritime practice, navigating solely by an auditory anomaly, especially one originating from a submerged source, in waters known for their sudden, unmapped pinnacles and powerful, unpredictable currents, was an act of extreme recklessness. The Lyonesse Shoals are a natural trap, a labyrinth of granite teeth hidden just beneath the surface, capable of tearing the hull from any vessel. For a hydrographer of Thorne's caliber, this deviation was not born of ignorance, but of an overwhelming, unshakable conviction. He believed the bells were a safe passage, a sonic map to a hidden gateway. The crew, as evidenced by fragmented testimonies later given to investigators by a deckhand who suffered a nervous breakdown and was evacuated from a supply rendezvous days before the final disappearance, grew increasingly uneasy. First mate Silas Croft, a man of quiet competence, reportedly challenged Thorne's course. He tried to reason with him, the deckhand recounted to a naval intelligence officer, said we were running blind into a rock garden. The captain just smiled, a strange, faraway look in his eyes, and said, "Blind, Mr. Croft? Or finally seeing clearly?" He locked the bridge. No one else was allowed near the navigation controls. The atmosphere aboard the sunken Dream must have been one of suffocating tension. A crew of seasoned mariners, trained to rely on charts, radar, and common sense, were now being commanded by a captain who pursued a phantom sound with the fervor of a zealot. They were sailing not towards a destination on a map, but towards a sound, a whisper from a drowned world. The ship, a vessel of steel and advanced electronics, was being steered by an ancient legend, lured by the very bells that had once warned generations of fishermen away from the watery grave of Lyonesse. The last pulses from the sunken Dream beacon were faint, irregular, as if the ship itself was struggling, caught in the invisible currents of an ancient, irresistible pull. Then, silence. The Lyonesse Shoals are not merely a place of ancient legend and phantom bells. They are a maritime anomaly, a region consistently marked by strange incidents that defy conventional explanation. For centuries, mariners navigating these waters have reported phenomena that hint at a persistent, dangerous force, something more than just submerged rock formations or unpredictable currents. These aren't isolated tales. They are recurring patterns in historical logbooks and coastal authority reports, painting a picture of a sea that actively resists intrusion. One of the most frequently cited anomalies is the erratic behavior of compasses. In an age before GPS, when a magnetic needle was a sailor's lifeline, reports of sudden, violent compass deviations in the Lyonesse area were deeply unsettling. The logbook of the HMS Vigilant, a Royal Navy patrol sloop, contains an entry from 1852 by Lieutenant Edward Sterling. At 300 hours, latitude 49°55 N, longitude 6°22 Ws, within Lyonesse Shoals, the binnacle compass spun wildly, completing 3 full revolutions before settling upon a false bearing of due east. All other instruments appeared sound. The phenomenon persisted for nigh on 10 minutes, causing considerable distress and disorienting the helmsman. No known magnetic anomaly mapped for this sector. Such incidents were not unique. Fishermen spoke of their compasses dancing or freezing when they strayed too close to certain submerged points, as if some unseen magnetic field was warping the very fabric of navigation. Beyond instrumentation, there are chilling accounts of sudden, localized weather phenomena. These are not the predictable gales of the Atlantic, but abrupt, violent squalls that materialize from a clear sky, often accompanied by a disorienting, thick fog that descends with unnatural speed. The Cornish Coast Guard Incident Report, number 719 Naus, from 1963 details the near loss of the trawler. The Prowler. Visibility dropped from 10 miles to less than 50 yards in under 2 minutes. A gale-force wind, unforecasted and localized, struck with no warning. Vessel tossed violently, lost all bearings. Crew reported feeling a profound sense of disorientation, a pulling sensation, as if the sea itself sought to drag them under. Radar rendered useless by atmospheric interference. Weather cleared as suddenly as it appeared, leaving no trace. Such events, defying meteorological logic, contributed to the area's sinister reputation. Then there are the more subtle psychological effects. Sailors who spent too long in the shoals often reported a pervasive sense of unease, a feeling of being watched, or an inexplicable melancholy that settled over the crew. Some spoke of hearing faint, non-bell-like whispers carried on the wind, or seeing fleeting, indistinct shapes in the periphery of their vision, especially at dawn or dusk. These are the kinds of subjective reports often dismissed as superstition or the product of isolation, but their recurrence across disparate crews and time periods is striking. Could the very essence of a drowned civilization, a place of immense human suffering and sudden obliteration, have left an imprint on the fabric of the region, manifesting as these inexplicable disturbances? For Captain Thorne, these historic warnings were not deterrents. They were further clues. He would have devoured these reports, not as cautionary tales, but as confirmation of a powerful, active force at play within Lyonesse. He likely interpreted the compass anomalies as localized energy fluctuations from a hidden source, the sudden squalls as protective mechanisms of a submerged entity, and the psychological effects as the subtle influence of a world on the threshold of revelation. He believed these were not signs of danger to be avoided, but challenges to be overcome, the final trials before the gates of the lost kingdom would open. In his mind, these were not warnings of doom, but manifestations of the very power he sought to harness, the very secret he was destined to uncover. He sailed into Lyonesse not fearing its strange phenomena, but seeking to understand and perhaps even command them. For Captain Elias Thorne, the allure of Lyonesse extended far beyond the crude glimmer of gold or the dusty appeal of ancient artifacts. His was not the quest of a common treasure hunter, driven by avarice. Thorne's obsession, fueled by the persistent, impossible chimes of the drowned bells, was for an impossible treasure, a profound esoteric prize that transcended mere material wealth. He believed Lyonesse held not just relics, but answers. His extensive research into obscure legends and historical accounts wasn't just about pinpointing a location, it was about understanding a civilization that had faced the ultimate catastrophe. Thorne hypothesized that a society capable of building 140 churches and thriving in such a fertile yet vulnerable location must have possessed an extraordinary understanding of their world. What if, he reasoned, their knowledge wasn't merely agricultural or architectural, but a deeper comprehension of the Earth's forces, or even the very fabric of existence? He often spoke, according to his recovered journals, of secrets buried deeper than the sea, of wisdom forged in cataclysm. This treasure could manifest in many forms. Perhaps it was a lost technology, an ancient form of energy or construction that allowed them to thrive, and perhaps even to anticipate or even mitigate the coming deluge. Could the bells themselves be more than mere bronze, serving as some form of sonic beacon or communication device from a surviving, submerged enclave? Thorne's theories ventured into the realm of the almost mystical, yet always grounded in his scientific background. He envisioned not ruins, but a preserved testament to human ingenuity, a library of lost knowledge encased in water. His log entries grew increasingly philosophical, hinting at the true nature of his pursuit. Entry 1015. The bells are not just sound, they are data, a language. They speak of adaptation, of resilience. What did they know? How did they prepare? The true gold of Lyonesse is not in its coffers, but in its wisdom. He believed that by deciphering the language of the bells, he could unlock the secrets of Lyonesse's survival, or at least the knowledge that allowed some part of it to endure. This was a treasure that could redefine human understanding, a legacy from a forgotten age. This profound, almost spiritual dimension to his quest explains his escalating recklessness. He wasn't merely risking his life for riches, he was risking it for revelation. The dangers of the shoals, the erratic compasses, the sudden squalls, these were not obstacles to be avoided, but trials on the path to enlightenment. He was convinced that the impossible treasure was not hidden away, but actively calling to him, that the bells were the voice of a profound truth waiting to be uncovered. He saw himself not as an invader, but as a chosen recipient, destined to bring Lyonesse's ultimate secret back to the surface. It was this intoxicating vision, this promise of unparalleled discovery, that drove the sunken dream into the waiting abyss. The vast, unbroken expanse of the open ocean, for all its majesty, is also a profound psychological crucible. Long voyages, especially those beyond the familiar lanes, strip away the usual anchors of reality. Days blur into a monotonous cycle of watch duties and the relentless roll of the deck. Human contact becomes limited. The familiar comforts of land-based life dissolve. In this environment, the mind, starved of diverse stimuli, often begins to create its own. For Captain Elias Thorne, already operating at the fringes of conventional thought, this isolation became an accelerant for his obsession. The persistent, ambiguous acoustic signature of the Lyonesse bells acted as a potent psychological trigger. The human brain is hardwired to seek patterns, to find meaning in noise. When confronted with an elusive, yet consistent sound, especially one as evocative as distant chimes, the mind can easily project its deepest desires and anxieties onto it. For Thorne, the bells ceased to be a mere phenomenon to be recorded. They became a voice, a directive. His intellectual brilliance, instead of grounding him, became a dangerous tool, allowing him to construct an intricate, self-reinforcing delusion. He wasn't just hearing bells. He was hearing a call, a promise of profound discovery that validated his every increasingly radical decision. This escalating monomania, this singular, all-consuming fixed idea became the corrosive force that unraveled the sunken dream from within. A captain's mental state is the psychological compass of his vessel. Thorne's absolute conviction, his dismissal of all dissenting voices, and his increasing isolation from his crew created an atmosphere of profound unease and fear. As the ship veered off course, deeper into the treacherous shoals, the crew was caught in a terrifying bind. Mutiny was unthinkable, a career-ending act of desperation. Yet following Thorne's orders meant sailing into what they instinctively knew was a trap. The psychological toll on the crew would have been immense. Sleep deprivation, the constant tension of navigating dangerous waters under a deranged command, and the insidious nature of the bells themselves, faintly heard, unsettlingly persistent, would have eroded their rational judgment. Some might have begun to doubt their own sanity, wondering if Thorne's conviction held a truth they were too blind to see. Others would have retreated into a stoic, desperate obedience, their faces grim, their eyes fixed on the horizon, hoping for an end that never came. The deckhand, evacuated just before the final disappearance, was a stark example of this psychological breakdown, unable to reconcile the captain's commands with the stark reality of their peril. In this psychological vortex, the line between external reality and internal delusion blurred. The sunken dream wasn't just navigating a physical sea, it was being drawn into the turbulent, unhinged landscape of its captain's mind. The ship, once a symbol of scientific exploration, became a vessel for a shared, terrifying journey into the heart of a delusion, where the phantom bells of Lyonesse told not just for a lost kingdom, but for the unraveling sanity of its crew. The enduring horror of the Lyonesse legend rests on one terrifying detail: its obliteration in a single night. This isn't the slow, relentless erosion of a coastline, nor the gradual encroachment of a rising tide. This was an instantaneous, total vanishing. For centuries, this speed seemed to relegate the story to the realm of pure fantasy. Yet modern geological understanding offers chilling mechanisms by which such a rapid cataclysm is not only possible, but probable. While the Cornish Peninsula does not sit on a major tectonic plate boundary, it is not entirely geologically inert. The Earth's crust is a dynamic, fractured puzzle, and even within seemingly stable plates, stresses can build along ancient fault lines or zones of weakness. A localized seismic event, a powerful earthquake originating directly beneath the Lyonesse landmass, could trigger what geologists call subsidence. This is not merely the ground shaking, it is the ground giving way. Imagine the very foundations of the land fracturing, sinking rapidly, pulled down by the Earth's own internal forces. A sudden, massive drop in elevation would allow the surrounding sea to rush in with overwhelming force, swallowing everything in its path in a matter of hours, if not minutes. The land would simply vanish beneath the waves, not slowly inundating, but plunging. Another potent agent of swift destruction is the tsunami. These are not tidal waves, but colossal walls of water generated by sudden, large-scale displacement of the seabed, most commonly from underwater earthquakes, but also from massive submarine landslides or volcanic eruptions. A distant, powerful seismic event in the Atlantic, or a localized undersea landslide off the continental shelf, could have sent an enormous wave hurtling towards the low-lying Lyonesse. As such a wave enters shallow coastal waters, its speed decreases, but its height dramatically increases, transforming it into a monstrous, churning wall of water. For a landmass like the theorized Lyonesse, a sudden towering tsunami would have been an unstoppable force. It would have swept inland with unimaginable velocity, inundating vast areas in moments, leaving no time for escape. The destruction would be absolute, and the subsequent retreat of the wave would leave behind a landscape utterly transformed, utterly submerged. Eyewitness accounts from the Cornish mainland, speaking of a roar that drowned out all other sound and a wall of churning black water, align perfectly with the known characteristics of a powerful tsunami strike. It is also plausible that these forces did not act in isolation. A localized earthquake could have simultaneously caused land subsidence and generated a destructive tsunami. The combined effect would be a compound catastrophe, an event so swift and overwhelming that it would burn itself into the collective memory as a single, terrifying night of annihilation. Dr. Fiona Carmichael, a paleoseismologist at the University of Bristol, stated in a recent symposium on ancient coastal disasters, the Lyonesse legend, viewed through a modern scientific lens, ceases to be purely mythical. The geological evidence for rapid sea level rise, combined with the potential for localized seismic activity and tsunami generation in the region, provides a compelling framework for a sudden, catastrophic inundation. What the ancients perceived as divine wrath or an inexplicable vanishing, science can now explain as the brutal, unpredictable power of our own planet. This cataclysmic hypothesis grounds the fantastical. It transforms the legend of Lyonesse from a mere folktale into the horrifying memory of a real geological event, a stark reminder of the planet's capacity for sudden, devastating change. For Captain Thorne, this scientific validation of the single-night event would have only intensified his belief in the tangible reality of the drowned kingdom, making his desperate search for its secrets not just a personal obsession, but a quest to unearth a profound lost chapter of Earth's history. He believed he was sailing not into myth, but into a submerged truth, waiting to reveal how an entire world could simply cease to exist. The investigation concludes, yet the questions linger, echoing like the very bells that lured the sunken dream into the abyss. Was Lyonesse a memory, a chilling oral history of a real catastrophe? The drowned forests, the geological evidence of rapid sea level rise, the potential for localized subsidence or a devastating tsunami all point to a world that could indeed be swallowed in a single, terrifying night. If so, Captain Elias Thorne, for all his brilliance, may have been a victim of a deep-time echo, sailing into a region still actively dangerous, a graveyard of forgotten land and unseen forces. Perhaps the phantom bells were not a call to treasure, but a final, desperate warning from the ancient dead, a lament for what was lost, which Thorne tragically misinterpreted as an invitation. He sailed into a historical trauma, and the sea, which had once devoured a kingdom, simply claimed another vessel. Or was Captain Thorne's ultimate fate a more intimate, psychological tragedy? The isolation of the open ocean, the intoxicating nature of a persistent, ambiguous sound, and the unchecked growth of a singular obsession. Did the bells truly exist as a unique phenomenon? Or did Thorne's mind, already primed for discovery, simply will them into a guiding voice? In the vast, featureless expanse of the sea, the human mind can become its own most treacherous territory. Perhaps the sunken dream was not sunk by a physical force, but by the gravitational pull of its captain's escalating monomania, dragging his crew and his vessel into an internal abyss from which there was no return. He found his sunken kingdom, perhaps, but it was a kingdom of his own unraveling mind. We are left with the profound, chilling enigma of the bells. Do they still toll from the dark, cold depths off the coast of Cornwall, a spectral chorus from a drowned world? Are they the last, mournful breath of Lyonesse, or merely the cruel, acoustic trickery of the ocean, misinterpreted by a man who sought too much? Did Captain Thorn finally stand on the shores of his impossible city, or did he simply vanish into the silence that follows the last, desperate peal? What are your theories on the fate of Lyonesse and Captain Thorn? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below.